Hello everyone. I hope you had your breakfast very well. So now we will start with the topic I mentioned before you went for the break. This one is Bounty Hunter's Guide to the Bounty Universe. There are tips, tricks, and things you should know if you are doing bounties. So let's start with it. So the old as gold, who am I? It's Faraz Khan. I am working with Backcrowd as an application security engineer. I'm a part-time bounty hunter and an ex-penetration tester. Our agenda for this talk will be how we handle generic scenarios, how and when to escalate the submissions, things we consider when we invite the researchers for private programs. I think this is quite the most interesting thing you guys are looking for, right? Okay, then understanding the program briefs, then vulnerabilities, taxonomies, standards. So we will start with systemic bugs. Have you guys heard of it, systemic bugs? Anybody? Just this guy? Like when I posted it over my Facebook that I'll be answering the questions which researchers would like to get answers, I think this was the first topic which somebody mentioned. Anybody? No? Universal bugs? Have you seen universal bugs? Like you submitted as an XSS and it got duplicated with universal bug, right? It happened with you? So there are a lot of researchers who want to get this answer. What are these systemic bugs or the universal bugs? How we handle these situations? Which kind of bugs may fall into this criteria? So first of all, how we handle these situations. When we get this, let's say a client started his program over any of the platform. And we started getting like IDORs or XSS. It's like 10 IDORs, then 20, it goes to 50, and in each and every request there are IDOR. Like we feel like, okay, the programmer may not knew, like there is something like IDOR. Or he forgot to place the protection or the security implementation over there is implemented, some security is implemented, but it is not working as it should. Some configuration mistake, right? So if you look it from the front, everything looks good. But when you start testing, you find IDORs or any of the authentication authorization bugs everywhere, just everywhere. So in these cases, what we do is, first of all, we ask the client if these bugs are supposed to be handled differently, because they will know. They have the access to the source code, right? So they will check the source code and see if it is an implementational bug, a systemic bug, which will be patched when they will be patching the first IDOR. Let's say, as I mentioned, configuration mistake, right? They implemented the whole security for IDOR, but it is not working as it was intended to. In those cases, the client will tell us, okay, when I'll be fixing this first bug, all the other bugs will be patched. So in those cases, your other bugs will be closed as duplicate. And it happens quite sometimes, and the researchers get pissed off, like, wow, it is a completely different URL. That one is a completely different parameter. Why you are closing my bug as a duplicate? But these are the cases, like when they will be fixing the first bug, all the other will be closed as duplicate. And all the others will get patched when they will be fixing the first bug. There are like CSRF, missing authentications, that side or SQLI. I have came through a program which was vulnerable to SQLI in each and every parameter, in each and every request it was making. It was a time-based. There is XSS file upload as well. I already explained how and why systemic bugs may happen. So there are other scenarios like duplicates, but they have a different priority or impact. A lot of researchers came to my Facebook and asked me, dude, see, I submitted this bug and this is account hijack. It is doing an account hijack, but it was duplicated with an open redirect. So there are some cases of open redirect that may lead to account hijack using the token takeover, right? So if attacker is able to get the token to his website and then he can use that to get your session or anything, which can lead to account takeover. But over here, if we look at it completely, like what will be the patch? Patching that open redirect is the only thing, right? So the first submission which came as open redirect, that's a P3. But the next submission which came as account takeover is a P1. But right now, what we are facing over here, like we can't duplicate, because if we are duplicating P1 with a P3, the researchers get pissed off. So in those situations, we first of all explain or try to see if the researcher is chaining any other bug, any lower priority impact, lower impact bug with the higher impact submission, and then getting it to account takeover. If he is doing something like that, like there is a won't fix, there is a login CSRF, which is a won't fix, and it got changed with another submission, another lower impact or higher impact submission, and led it to a higher impact. In that case, if the higher impact is already submitted by another researcher, it will obviously get fixed, right? So in those cases, what we do is still triage the submission as a lower impact. Rather than going for the P1, we will still triage his submission for that chaining thing as a lower impact. What happens is, let's say, in that case, the minor impact submission, open redirect came first, and the higher impact came later. But there are some times when the higher impact came first and the lower impact came later on. What will we do in this scenario? Yeah, lower gets duplicated with a higher impact. Like account takeover came first, then open redirect came later on. So it's a win-win situation for both of us. Same bug in a URL but different parameters. There are many times like researchers have a doubt. There is a URL which have many parameters. Most of them or more than one of them are vulnerable to stored XSS, SQLi, IDOR, something like that. In those cases, what happens is we duplicate only if all the parameters are going from a form. If there is a submission form, like you are submitting a request from a form, and both of the parameters or all of the parameters are vulnerable to XSS, in that case, it is very obvious that the programmer will fix them all, because he can see these are all the parameters which will be going into this request. But in case it's just a request from which goes internally, and that was vulnerable, there is nothing like these are all the parameters which go for this URL. The programmer may forget to fix the other parameters as well while patching it. So what we do is first we ask the client what will be the patch in this situation, and will it patch all the other parameters or not? Any questions about this? If I'm on Facebook, I know a lot of questions will come about like, how do you think, like, why will the client tell us if the patch will be single or different one? You want to get the answer for that? No? If you are not asking, I'm not even interested to answer that. Anybody want to ask this question or not? Nobody is interested. All right, I'll move on. Submission was only reproducible. Okay, we have a question answer session in the end, so you can ask those questions at that time. I'm not that rude. All right. So submission was only reproducible when it was reported. A lot of times you come into a situation when you reported a submission, it was reproducible, but later on it gets not reproducible. Like when the ASE is testing it, right? Anybody? It happens, right? So in those cases, first we look at the POC you provided. Any video POC, any screenshot, like something which can prove it was there. At least something. So it basically is an idea. When you are submitting a submission, you must, if you have time for that, just go ahead and make a video POC. If not a video POC, at least screenshots which can prove that your bug was there initially. At least initially it was there. If we are trying it, okay, it's no more reproducible, but we can see the POC and the researcher. If he's a trusted researcher, we will know, okay, he must not be lying. It must be there. We will first of all reach the client, ask them if it was patched by them recently, and then our client are very trusted. They will obviously tell us if the patch was made or not. So in those cases, before we reach the client, we first check the POC, then we check the applicability of the submission. Okay, like let's say there is something like product ID equals to 1 over there, and with that ID equals to 1, somebody is submitting like SSRF. It sounds great, like it can't happen. It's not applicable. It can't be working like that, because that ID parameter, the way it is working is it may be vulnerable to SQLI or XSS, maybe, but not SSRF. Then if the POC is not there, we will first look at the applicability. If it looks like, okay, it could happen, then we go ahead and ask the client. Then even if it's not applicable, like we see it's not applicable, then we check the current behavior of the application, like how it is behaving. If the client have made any changes, it will be behaving differently. So we will know that, okay, is there any security implementation looking over here, or the way it is working, the functionality over here, it might be vulnerable before or not. If we find any of these proof, any of these three over there, we will directly reach the client. We are not like, if it is no more working, we will just close your submission and tell you that it's NR. Scope contains multiple domains, but only their language varies. So it's like there are many of the programs where they have multiple domains listed. One of them is French, Spanish, English, Chinese. All of them looks alike. Everything is same, but the only difference is their language. So many researchers, they get pissed off, like, why, dude? Why they are inserted in the first place if they don't want us to test them all? It is like, yeah, they should not have been inserted, but there are a few points, like different offers, different functionalities, different agendas, different objects may be placed on different domains. Okay, maybe the whole application is same, most of the parts are same, but quite few places are there where different offers are placed for different countries. This is when the client want all of them to be tested. He won't tell, okay, this is the particular area where I am putting the offer and it is different from other ones, right? He won't come and tell you that. You just have to test it. Just the normal thing to do in these cases is simply what you can do is check if all of the applications have the same vulnerabilities vulnerability which you checked. If it is in all of them, it is a duplicate. But if it is in one of them and it is not affecting others, so it's not a duplicate. Why XSS priorities may vary. There are many standards for the bugs like XSS, stored XSS, and then many of them. And so there are researchers who will check the taxonomies, and they will say that see, stored XSS is always a P2. you can see over here, like it is written, it must be a P2. You can't give me a P3. Why are you giving me a P3? So there are reflected stored XSS, then self-stored XSS also there. But even if your submission is a self-stored XSS, you won't get a P2 for that. What is the priority for a self-stored XSS? Anybody? You won't even say that word, right? It's a P5 won't fix. Why? Because simply when you yourself is inserting XSS into your own browser and you are making yourself a victim, are we supposed to pay you for that? It's not, right? But there are researchers who can manage to convert these self-XSS to stored XSS. Very talented researchers over here. They're just sitting. All right. So, authenticated and unauthenticated XSS. Anybody? Anybody know what is authenticated and unauthenticated? Okay. Rather than explaining which one is authenticated or unauthenticated XSS, who will tell me which one of them is higher priority? Unauthenticated. Why? Right. It's for all the users, but authenticated XSS is for a particular company, for a particular where you are a user of a company and you inserted that XSS, and only the users from that particular company are able to view that. So that's authenticated XSS. But unauthenticated is public, and all the users on that particular domain are vulnerable to this one, and this one is a higher impact than authenticated XSS. So XSS may vary as per their priority. These are the priorities, like higher level to a lower user. If the admin is inserting XSS to a lower level user, why don't he directly go and change his password? Simple enough. But yeah, it is a bug, so it is accepted. It is a valid bug, but it is not as higher impact as the other one, like lower level user to a higher level user. Because lower level user do not have any access to the higher level user, and if they access the higher level user, it is obviously a higher impact than the other one. Yeah, one of the biggest problem over here is submission getting closed after getting triaged. Like, no. This is something researchers cannot understand. Like, dude, it was triaged. That's it. No more questions, nothing else. That's triaged, that's it, that's accepted. Nothing can happen after that, right? Okay, but then later on, it may be closed as NA, P5, something like that. Why? Anybody got an answer on that? Your submission is closed as NA even after it was triaged by Bugcrowd or any other platform's ASE. Initially, we have our own standards. We look at the submission as a standard. There is a standard like if it's an XSS, if it's an open redirect, weak password, anything. So it is a valid submission. We pass it to the client. Later on, when the client check it, let's suppose weak password policy. When the client checked it, he says, this is my business requirement. I can't go ahead and put a bigger password over here. I can't. This is what I need to do. I just need to keep it. And we know about this. We are just keeping it this way. Obviously, it will be closed as NA or a P5 won't fix. Later on, when the client checks it, he have his own decision. Like, in my own application, is it having any impact or not? He have these questions. If he thinks it is not having an impact, he will close it. But if he thinks it is having an impact, it is obviously moved to unresolved and resolved something, whatever. Then closed as duplicate. This is a big question. Like, why didn't the ASE found it? Why it was not closed as a duplicate in the initial stage? It was triaged. That means there was no duplicate for it, right? It may happen. It may also happen that the ASE was not able to find the duplicate. Or it may also happen that there was no duplicate at that time. What happens is, I myself, like, I'm looking at a bug, I triaged it, I checked for the duplicate, there are no duplicate. But later on, when the client came and checked their submission, he finds out that the patch for this submission is same as the patch for another submission, because he have access to the source code. We don't have access to the source code. Then the client finds this out. See, he will explain to us that this was the patch for the another submission. You can check over here. Both of them have the same patch. So when we will fix that another submission, this one will also be fixed. Now, it is closed as duplicate. Different URLs, but it's still closed as duplicate. Like, yeah.
Hello? Hello? Okay. Hello? Yeah, so there was one instance where I reported one XSS, okay? Right. So it was initially triaged, then after a few days it was marked as not applicable. So when I asked why it was not applicable, that the answer was like the client said marked it as not applicable because of some reasons. I can't mention the reasons now. And after 1 month I see the same parameter, same payload. Someone, other researcher reported it after exactly like 25 days, and that was accepted and rewarded with a huge amount of bounty. So when I asked again why the same vulnerability was accepted, I did not get a proper satisfying answer from the platform. So what may be the reason for such scenario?
Okay, I can rather answer it right now, or maybe I can answer it in my next slide, because a situation for something like that. Is it working? It's working? Okay. So there is an answer for that in my next slide. So I should not just jump it off. I'll answer you in my next slide, right? Okay. So for now we will continue with different URLs, but it's still closed as duplicate. RESTful URL. Okay. I would like to explain a very simple situation over here. There is a website, let's say Flipkart. It have different products. All the products are there. So every product have a different URL. It comes in the URL, like Lenovo mobile or Samsung mobile. All the URLs look different, but in the end, the product page is having one single code, right? You are not thinking that they are writing different codes for each of the product, are you? We can't, right? They are using one single code for all the URLs, but the URLs are different. So this is the RESTful terminology. What happens, even though they are having different URLs, but in the end, they are using one single code. So many times researchers get confused, like they will be telling that this URL is different, but the one I reported is different. So we used to try and let them know about the RESTful thing, so they can develop an understanding about that. Then the universally vulnerable parameter. Anybody have seen universally vulnerable parameters? There are some parameters in a program, in an application, which are universally vulnerable. Like I have came through and it was like a continue parameter was there. You just have to insert that continue parameter into any request, even if it was not there. You just have to insert that continue parameter over there, and it will do the open redirect. One strange thing, right? Very strange. But it used to happen. So in that case, the universally vulnerable parameter, you can understand, client won't go and fix each particular functionality differently. He's gonna fix that particular parameter only. So it's a universal fix. Then the systemic bugs. This, I have already explained why different URLs may be closed as duplicate in case of systemic bugs. I will continue. XSS insertion points versus execution points. You guys know about this? Insertion point, execution points? Which XSS? Which type of XSS do it? Which one? Stored. Loud, guys. Yeah, so this one is for stored. Different execution point, different insertion point, and how they patch it. So there are clients who have an application and they have their own ways to patch fix, like to patch XSS. There is a stored XSS, it executes on a different page. So what they will do, they will actually do the patch over the execution point rather than the insertion point. In those cases, the payload was inserted from a different page and the execution may be the same page, right? Two different points to insert the bug, but the execution point is same. In that case, we will the patch will be on execution point and it will be a duplicate. But the researchers ask a question, why it is duplicated when the first submission was having a different insertion point, I inserted it from there and now inserted it over here. They don't understand why it is duplicated on the basis of execution point. So different clients have their own priorities, have their own applications and their own ways to patch it. When they patch it, they may fix the execution point and they may fix the insertion point. So different bugs may get duplicated on the basis of insertion point or the execution, but it is either of them in a program. There are programs like they will fix the execution point, but it won't happen like your submission is also duplicated on the basis of insertion point and the basis of execution point at the same time in the same program. How and when to escalate? So this is the one about your question, the one you asked. You asked that your submission was closed as NA, right? And later on, you submitted the same bug and it was accepted, right? Oh, it was duplicated. Okay. You know that researcher? No. Yeah, okay. So his question is that he first of all submitted a submission and it was closed as NA, but later on somebody else submitted the same submission with the same point of insertion, but it was accepted. Right? Correct. Okay. So in those cases, it happens. I have seen these things happening. But initially, maybe you were not able to explain them the impact over there, the correct impact, or maybe you didn't exploited that submission as well as another researcher now exploited it properly and he showed them the impact. So the one who showed the impact gets the reward, right? Because initially it's like chaining. I talked about chaining. A lower impact bug chained with a higher impact bug and then same thing. So the lower impact bugs also get accepted in that case. You got a question?
If an XSS which was like self-XSS, self-stored XSS, it can be P5 and not rewarded, okay? So I have seen multiple cases where a self-XSS was in future next time when a new feature was included, that places the output encoding was not there. So which was self-stored XSS previously, that became a stored XSS for others. So in such scenarios, it should be either not accepted, but at least it should be remediated before itself. And when I reported again, it was accepted. So it depends on platform, it depends on clients, right? Similarly, in this scenario, the impact was exactly same, payload also almost same, parameters same, page same, everything was same. Mine was rejected and later it was accepted. It had a long email conversation, but there was no conclusion for that. So later on I left it. I'll try doing that next time.
Okay. Yeah, as you said, it may depend on if you have newer functionalities over there, because maybe at that time there was no impact, there was no login or something, or maybe there are many different reasons, generic reasons. These are generic scenarios, right? So there may be many different reasons at that time why your bug was not accepted, but later on they inserted something new which caused that XSS to impact that particular functionality, and it was accepted at that time. But in those cases, you can still reach the internal team. Every platform have their own support, right? Just reach the support, ask it. I have seen getting answers very quickly over support. So if that is there, just wait for the standard time. Every platform have their own standard time to respond. Like, wait for it. Wait. Like, okay, if your submission is a higher impact, you will be replied in a day or two, usually in a day. But if it's a lower impact, you may get a response in 5 days too. So it depends on the priority of your submission. But even if there is no response after 5 days, go ahead and ask the support what is happening over here. They will try and explain. What?
There was this, the same thing which happened with this guy, the same thing happened with me. So I asked him, okay, what is the reason? Then there was no response. Again, I asked him, what is the reason? Then there's no response. Then I say, bye bye, background.
Go. You can go ahead and reach the ASE directly. We are available on Facebook. We are available everywhere. Like, ask these guys. They used to message me directly about their submissions. If there is something they want to know about their own submissions,
there will be people who don't know what's your like contact number, or what's your mail ID, or maybe I'm not friend of yours on Facebook. Then
I'm not asking you to send me a friend request.
That's why, that's why I'm telling you. So there are people who don't know, who don't have a contact, and still same thing happened. And it's not just like that guy.
It's not like you have to ask the particular ASC about your submission. Even if you are asking me about somebody else's who handled your submission, or any one of the team, like there are many guys, at least you can find one of us. Or I have seen, like, on support things gets answered.
So that's what I'm telling you now. If I'm not getting support, if like
in that case you can directly reach us out.
So
that's the best way.
Yeah, who will take that? Okay, why again I'll go wasting my time on finding people who on the support and finding my Twitter handle or their whatever it is. So for me it will be a waste of my time only, no? So if I didn't get the support, or if I didn't get the response back, like even in a week or two or so, then why I should do that? So
I have not seen actually things happening like this, because anytime I close a bug like this,
I'll give you my account ID. You can search it.
Sure. Just connect with me on Facebook about any of these situations.
Sure.
Because as I am an ASE, whenever I close something and I know this researcher will come back, and it happens in a day or two, a guy from the support pings me like, this is the ticket, like, he is asking this thing, can you please explain him or explain us about why it is done like this? So it's not like you won't get answer. I don't know how or when, but if you are reaching support, you must get an answer.
It's about a year ago, and after that, like, I'm not.
Just try and send me the ticket number.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so there are standard response time for the submissions that in that response time you will get an answer. Just make a decent comment on your submission. If it is closed, you are not able to understand why it is closed, just ask the ASC why it is closed like this, or any question you have. You will get an answer soon. If you are not getting your answer, just try and connect to the support about that. Then you can also escalate your submission if a lower reward is there or a lesser priority is assigned to your submission. These are the places like these are the situations when you can directly contact support, or after that time, just wait for that time. I have seen researchers from India itself who is like, after they make a submission, after 1 hour, or there is a particular guy, I can't name him. This guy, he will make a submission and at the same time, he will say like, check urgent, check ASAP, bounty. Please proceed with the bounty. Urgent, check ASAP. Even if it's a P4 or a P5, he will say like, check ASAP. Urgent reply, give bounty. Like, I also did the same thing with him once. I made a comment. After each hour, I went to that submission, read and reply. So, it's like, just try and wait for the time. If if there is a standard response time, just wait for that. If there is no response, rather than going to Twitter and posting something very like unethical, reach the support before you do anything like that. Okay, so things which are considered when inviting researchers for private. Under 250 rank, then verified researchers. Who are the verified researchers? Right. So just make yourself verified, because there are many programs, many clients who will ask us that they want all the researchers for their program who are verified. If you are verified, you have a higher chances to get privates. Then higher impact vulnerability finders. Sure.
Asking our personal documents. Why they are asking the personal documents? Like they ask to submit Aadhaar card and
Right.
PAN card and all stuff.
Uh-huh.
Like seriously, my manager asked me that you can't do bug bounty now. So I asked why I can't do bug bounty now. So he's like, you have submitted your personal documents, so like they are our competitors. Buckraud is our competitor right now. I'm like, what the?
Okay. See, they are asking for a verified researcher, because when you are giving someone to test your website, you will like him to be verified. Like, at least Bugcrowd know, or the platform know him, who is actually testing their application. They would not want any rogue researchers to be checking out bugs, and they may be selling exploits online. So it's better if the researchers are verified. They will know that, okay, they have something like, okay, these guys are known, these guys are testing, these are not some rogue researchers who came from nowhere and they may go nowhere, right? This is why people or the clients are looking for verified researchers. So better get yourself verified over the platform. Then the higher impact vulnerabilities finder. Those researchers who are finding bugs of a higher impact, they are usually given priorities while giving privates. Then the trusted researchers and the activity logs. Activity logs like be active on the platform. If you are submitting submissions like in 15 days or 30 days, you are not an active researcher with Bugcrowd or any platform, any other platform. Just be active. If you are active, then they know if we are giving him a private, then he will be giving us some output out of it, right? If you are giving an output, you are obviously, there are higher chances that you may get an invite. Then the trusted researchers, it's like those things. Go ahead, put it on Twitter, post about your bugs on Twitter. Like if you don't get a response in an hour or two, just you are going ahead and putting it on Twitter or something, Facebook. No, trusted, win the trust. If you are a trusted researcher, you will be prioritized for privates. Then the researcher's behavior, that is also concerned. We do analysis internally, like all the researchers who behave nicely in a decent manner, so they also get priority while going for the privates. There are these two links where you can read about this more. Okay, understanding the program briefs. there are many researchers who don't go with the program briefs before they start doing bounty. So scope, out of scope. Adam have already explained a lot about these scope and out of scopes. But there are something like, okay, you see, when you started checking out the scope, you see like start.something.com. So you think like all the subdomains are in scope, right? But there might be a section which says out of scope and docs.thatsomething.com is out of scope. That is a testing domain. So just wait for it before you go ahead and submit a bug on docs.something.com. Check out the out of scope place too. Exclusion list. There is an exclusion list in many of the programs. They exclude the submissions they don't want to patch or fix, like lower risk according to their own application. These exclusion lists are already always prioritized over the taxonomies and standards. Anybody know about any taxonomy online? You guys check any taxonomies, standards, OWASP, VRT? You do, right? So these are the taxonomies. Just last one. Yeah. Okay. So these are the taxonomies, and the exclusion list is always prioritized over the taxonomy. If our client have excluded something like weak password or many other things in the exclusion list, we won't be accepting them as per the standards, because maybe they are good as per the standards, but for this client they don't make any impact. So always the briefs are always prioritized over the standards. So there are different standards like OWASP, then the variants are there. You must understand about the variants like self-XSS or, okay, XSS have variants like I mentioned before. Then there are referer token. So many of the researchers will see the one which is in P3. They won't see the one which is in P5. They will say, see, this one, referer token in the request, leaking is via referer token is in a P3. They won't go and check the P5 one. So these are the variants. If it is going over HTTPS, it won't make any effect. So this is why you must check the variants in all the vulnerabilities taxonomies. OWASP have it, VRT have it, and other program briefs. So I already mentioned why standard taxonomies versus bounty briefs, which one is prioritized. The bounty briefs is always prioritized. So I hope that explains you. Any other questions, guys?